This one's going to be a little lively demonstration, a little bit of song, a little bit of dance, right?
How'd you do?
Okay, a lot of song and a lot of dance, and here they are.
So hello, everyone. We're Zach and Joe, as we've introduced ourselves. We work for iStrategy Labs, and just quickly, I'm going to show you 2 silent videos to kind of show you why we're up here doing this.
Picture show.
Yeah, they're just like 2 loops. So basically, the 2 of us get paid to wire, solder, and prototype every day. So like we build stuff like this, like crazy interactive installations that are one-offs. So like we don't manufacture PCBs or anything like this. Like most of the stuff, we finish it like 5 minutes before it goes live. So it's all very much a prototype. And this was one that we did for Red's Apple Ale, which is a really terrible beer. The next one?
So do you want to say what it is real quick?
Yeah, so just to tell you about this. So this launcher right here is controlled through the internet. It's basically a turret that we built. So people go online and destroy this like 3,000 square foot set that we built.
So there's one Arduino wired up to control the launcher, and then there's another one behind the set that's wired up to all the targets. So when the targets get hit, there's a sensor that then sends things up to the internet and lets us know that things are hit.
And then the next one we did is like a Nickelodeon project where it's a skill crane that people can also go online and control it and pick things up. So we basically went through all the trials and tribulations that you guys were talking about with the watercolor bot.
Yeah, the top of this thing looks a lot like the top of your watercolor bot.
A lot of steppers just jamming things into corners. But yeah, so we went through that. We built that. Like this is all it, and it's fancy looking and everything. 3D printing, like everything that we do is all about rapid prototyping, and we throw it all together really quickly.
Yeah, and so I think the cool part about it is that the things that we're going to show you in a second, so we're going to show you a really simple demo, and I'm going to show you some of the code to make 2 LEDs blink, so that's pretty advanced. But pretty much the hardware code that we use to do those things are what we're going to show you now, just with a lot more wires touching a lot more things.
Yeah, our specialty is generally internet-connected devices, so we built out a little project in such a way where it would be very easy for you to connect a server to it. They're the hooks that are in the code for that. That's really simple. But so what we're talking about is obviously soldering. This is a soldering iron. It looks a little different than the ones that are in the room over there. All the soldering irons are luckily preset for you. They're set around like 720 degrees roughly, which is what you use to solder. If you don't know what that is, which I'm sure all of you do, is basically taking metal to fuse metal to other metal. Like that's simply what it is. And it's going to be the most important thing, probably. I mean, I guess outside of code maybe. But it's like the most important thing that you're going to do when you're building these bots. Especially if it's something that's moving because you want things to hold together because breadboards don't work for everything. Breadboards are great because you can just jump things around and just like move things in holes, and basically how they work is you have voltage rails, or you have rails that go across, so anything that's plugged here also works here. You have voltage rails, and then everything can communicate with one another. Sorry, that's a really terrible explanation. And then you move on to like perf boards, which are essentially just breadboards that you can make permanent, and that's basically it.
And we can show one on the demo cam in a couple minutes.
And then wiring. So this is our Nickelodeon project when we were throwing it together, which is a complete rat's nest of projects. But hopefully, like you guys, as you come to us, where all the soldering irons are, like we'll help you try to make everything as nice and as clean as possible. Like I try to pride myself on making very clean-looking projects.
Just not at this point.
Yeah, this was this thing's caught on fire, and we had to quickly redo everything, and then someone with a camera had to take a picture. So that's why we ended up with that. And then to talk about what we're going to do next, like we're going to quickly show you another silent video of me like soldering this little project together that we're going to show you.
Totally should have added the music.
Yeah, I should have put sound. But yeah, so I mean, the idea is if you can see on the right-hand side, like I built it all on a breadboard, and then I'm just moving everything over. Luckily, with the magic of time lapse, you can't see me when I screw up a couple of times because working on it upside down is like a pain. But this will be done.
So if you do screw up, how do you unscrew up?
So you unsolder everything. So, basically, that's a solder sucker. It's generally what I've kind of grew up using. So you heat up the solder, suck it out of there, and then you can take the part out. And that's pretty much how it works.
And I know that there's also some wick, I guess, over the table, which is it's like a little piece of another wire-looking piece that you can hold against the hot solder, and it'll suck it up.
Yeah, so it's basically like a mesh that as you heat it and the solder up, will suck up the solder and take it out of basically the hole or whatever that you're using or the piece that you're using. So this is just going to repeat forever.
Yep,
So,
and then also the thing that you're using there, do you want to explain that real quick? The little helping hands thing, because we have a couple of those.
Oh, yeah, so what you'll see at our station are obviously soldering irons, solder. We have heat guns, which you'll use to basically make, when you solder two wires together, you put a nice piece of rubber over it, heat it up, shrinks it. So it's basically shrink wrap. So you'll do that. And you'll also see some of the helping hands, which are more like they're alligator clips with a magnifying glass. It's very helpful to just get two wires held together because when you're trying to solder, you're trying to do tiny things, it gets very frustrating if you're trying to do it without something like that. What I'm using here is like a Panavise, which basically is like a circuit board holder to help me do the work. And there's helping hands are probably somewhere in the frame somewhere. But yeah, that's basically it.
And then we also have several of the first aid kits right behind.
Yeah,
the soldering.
so we most likely will be the people where you hear the owls coming from, other than I imagine the drone area, which we have our own horror stories about those.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now we're just going to go and we're going to show this little thing that we built, which is, like I said, very simple. We're just using a relay, which I love because they make a nice clicky sound, so I love using relays. And it's just switching between two LEDs. And Joe will explain it all.
Yeah, so I think the other piece of prototyping is you can put this stuff together. Thank you. And you can see our board here, and this is what he built in our shop the other day. Yeah. And so you can put this stuff together, but it's not going to do anything. We are using an Arduino here, and so we need to tell the Arduino to do something. So I don't want to turn this too much into an introduction to Arduino, but I will quickly show you the interface for getting code onto the Arduino. And if you haven't played around with an Arduino before, I think a lot of people raised their hand when Francis asked about the Arduinos. There is a whole examples section up here in the IDE, which is freely available. And there are tons and tons of examples. And so I'm going to show you one of a pretty complicated way to blink two LEDs. So I will zoom in so people can see this. All right. So this is, I'm just going to hit some of the high points here. So what we're trying to do is using the relay, we're trying to jump between the two states to make the different LEDs blink, right? So the relay has two states. We have the relay connected to an output pin here. You can see my finger. Yeah, this one.
The orange wire.
So we have it connected here. I was saying your wiring was getting
Yeah. Sorry.
So we have it connected to an output pin here, and then it'll flip the relay state, which will light up one of the two LEDs, and it'll switch between them. So right now, we start by saying it'll blink between them in 2 seconds, and then what I wanted to do to show something that I find really useful for prototyping is I'm just going to decrease or increase that delay time between them, right? So I can illustrate something that I find useful for prototyping. And that is this serial command here. So this is actually going to allow us to do serial communication. Once I hook up the USB, we'll be able to use the serial port to communicate. And so the reason why I'm doing this, there's other ways you could do this. Like there's examples of just using the keyboard, right? So you could use the up arrow and the down arrow. But the reason why I always do it this way is because for what we do for our work, a lot of our communication comes from the internet, right? So we actually need to be connected with Wi-Fi or Ethernet. And the serial library parallels very nicely the same thing that the Ethernet library uses. So instead of just saying, like you'll see in a second when I say, if I have data on the serial port, do something, I can do the exact thing by saying, if there's data coming across the Ethernet port, do something, right? Whereas if I hooked it up with the arrow keys, I'd have to write something else to handle those. So right here, the setup is something that happens once when the program starts. All right, I set the pin mode to be an output. You can have output or input pins. And then we do this loop over and over and over again until we turn the Arduino off. So I set the pin state one way. I don't really care which way it is. I'm just going to flip between them. This will make one LED blink. And then I delay for a certain amount of time. This is actually going to delay the Arduino from doing anything. So it's not the best way to do it, but it's the easiest way to do it. I then switch the pin states, and then I delay again. And here's where I listen for serial input. So I say if there's something coming into the serial port, turn it into a string and act on it, right? So in this case, I'm acting on it by just decreasing and increasing the delay time. So again, the reason why I do it this way with the serial monitor, which I will show you here in a second, is because it mirrors very nicely the Wi-Fi or Ethernet libraries. So I'm going to go ahead and plug the Arduino in, if I put it in the right port. Okay. And you see, it already has the code on it, so it's already doing it. We're just looking at the two LEDs blinking. But for me to be able to actually communicate with it, I need to reflash it here.
I guess while he's doing that, I can quickly explain. I know we keep saying relay over and over again, and for you guys that don't know that, a relay is essentially a mechanical switch that's on the inside of this little black box that the Arduino controls by sending voltage to it. So as it's switching that's why you get this nice clicky sound. Like there is a piece of metal or copper on the inside that's essentially switching between two rails that are sending out the voltage.
And so if I put in a string like decrease, so DEC for decrease, you will see it's now, this is the serial monitor of Arduino, which I'm sure a lot of you have used, if not for getting information, but you can also give it information. So you see every time I type in the DEC string, it'll decrease. And it will start blinking faster. And so you can use this to do anything, right? Like you can use this to communicate with your code in any way. And like I said, there's also ways that you can take straight things from the keyboard. And then because I'm reckless, we will take it down to a 0-second delay. I'm excited. There we go. And you can stop now.
Yeah, okay. For the most part, that's generally it. And he's going to show a slide that has the URL for this code, which is extremely simple. But we are here to help you guys make what you want, like reality, basically. So it's like we're the 101 for this, and hopefully you will be coming to us multiple times throughout this whole entire project or conference.
And I just need to make that smaller. Oh, this is just
nice.
All right. There we go. Okay. So that simple code is on GitHub if anyone wants to grab it, or just grab us. What are we going to do in our workshop?
So what we're going to be doing is just kind of messing around with some text-to-voice Arduino applications that are controlled by the internet. Yep. So we will be soldering, wiring, and prototyping our own little project, and we will be glad to help anyone do the same or something else.
Excellent. Thank you.